because we have little historical experience with tariff changes of the magnitude that the U.S. is contemplating. Nevertheless, some things are clear.
Hey yo, and welcome to today, where I don't have conditioner for my hair. But on more important news, Trump has recently called for a national emergency. Here, let us take a look at a post he made. Why would our country allow another country to supply us with electricity, even for a small area? Who made these decisions, and why? And can you imagine Canada stooping so low as to use electricity that so affects the life of innocent people as a bargaining chip and threat? They will pay a financial price for this so big that it will be read about in history books for many years to come. I had to reread that a couple times because I, for some reason, had a mental block, and I kept on seeing the word read, that it will be read about. I had a mental dilemma where it was like, am I reading this right? Long story, no, I wasn't. But what is this all about, you may ask yourself? And that is, it comes from Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, talking about using electricity tariffing electricity to America in lieu of Trump's tariffs on us. And there's a lot of talks about this whole entire thing, because this is a recent trending thing of a national emergency, and there are some Canadians who are talking about the obvious way how he speaks out of one side of his mouth, but then he acts in a completely different side of his mouth. You know, he'll say, oh, we don't need anything from Canada, but then when Ontario applies a 25% surcharge on electricity exports, he then says, it's a national emergency. And so there's a lot of, liberals talking about that, calling out the obvious bit of, I don't know, is it called hypocrisy? I don't think that's the exact word here, but they're calling it out, they're calling out the irony of the situation. And then there are some people who are talking about this in ways that are opposing the liberal type view. And they're kind of the one I more aside myself with. They say, there are two entities on the planet that currently have the resources and influence necessary to go toe-to-toe with the US in a trade conflict. One is China, the other is OPEC. And then they note, sorry Canada, Doug Ford just solidified your country's place in the pecking order. Now, I don't entirely disagree, and I also don't entirely agree, because, Canada could be much higher in the pecking order. We absolutely could be. We have the resources to do that, but due to our certain politicians, Trudeau, doing things in Canada, we don't exactly have that kind of economy to go toe-to-toe. We could, but we just have some really mentally deficient leaders in our country. Hopefully, Pierre will situate that out. But they do bring up a point as to how they bring up an NBC News article. They say Canada backs down from 25% electricity surcharge after Trump threats. We backed down. Now, as someone who's been away for a bit, I had to educate myself as to what is all going on around. What is all happening? Because I was a little bit unknowing. My brain wasn't fully caught up. I didn't know what all happened. I've been gone, okay? And apparently, this is how this has happened. Trump first said, oh, we're doing the 25% tariff on Canada. And then Doug Ford, in retaliation, said, we're going to do a 25% tariff of electricity to Americans. And then Trump said, okay, you want to do that? I'm going to add 25% more on the steel tariff. Here, let me just read a small article for you to perhaps put this in better wording than I am doing right now. Donald Trump has halted a plan to double U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel and metal imports to 50% just hours after first threatening them. Tariffs of 25% still went ahead and took effect on Wednesday. And this is to say, what had happened is the original tariff, 25%, and then Doug Ford comes in with a 25% electricity tariff, and then Donald Trump doubles, or, well, here's my way of looking at this. This is just tit for tat. That is all that happened here. This was just tit for tat. It was the first original 25% tariff, and then Doug Ford said, you know, we're going to add 25% of our own materials to you, and then Trump was like, okay, I'll add 25% to the original tariff. So it was kind of just tit for tat. The only difference is that Doug Ford decided they couldn't last with that, and which is why he walked back the 25% electricity tariff, and from him doing that, then Trump walked back the 25 addition tariff to Ontario. So, what does this all mean? Well, in the end, things are still going on as expected. Nothing changed, things are still moving along. The only difference is, as this person said, sorry Canada, Doug Ford just solidified your country's place in the pecking order. It kind of just solidified that Canada doesn't exactly have that much talking power when it comes to economic power, you know? Not really that great. Which is where I'm gonna talk about something a little bit more heartfelt for Canada, and better in the long term of actually being a country that can stand up for ourselves economically wise. Daniel Smith says, premiers across Canada are uniting to build more oil and gas infrastructure from coast to coast. I'm happy that Premier of Nova Scotia is aligned with what Alberta has been arguing for decades. We need to knock down interprovincial trade barriers for the good of every hardworking Canadian family and the future economic security of Canada. Finally got that one out. But it is good in news that we're going to be building Canada's economy in total, something that we've ever so desperately needed, but yet so many premiers and prime ministers have been so against, and now they're for it in lieu of Trump's conversation and how he's talking, because we need the economic infrastructure. We need it. We've always needed it, but I guess now we just need it more, and the premiers are like, I don't want to lose my Canadian citizenship, and so let's get those pipelines going. Hey, you know, in the end we win, so I'm okay with that. I ain't gonna complain that too much, just, you know, a little bit funny. But now to talk about something that's a little bit more on the opposite end of Daniel Smith talking about building our economy, which is the Bank of Canada. Government.exe is corrupt, says the Bank of Canada cuts rates for the 6th consecutive time, while saying a tariff conflict with the US would or could crush the Canadian economy. I might have had a Freudian slip there. Pretty funny coming from the Bank of Canada, because that is what they've been doing for years, talking about crushing our economy.
Today we lowered our policy interest rate by 25 basis points. This is our 6th consecutive decrease and brings the policy rate to 3%. We also announced our plan to complete the normalization of our balance sheet, ending quantitative tightening. The bank will restart asset purchases in early March, beginning gradually so that its balance sheet stabilizes this year and then begins to grow modestly in line with economic growth. The potential for a trade conflict triggered by new U.S. tariffs on Canadian exports is a major uncertainty. This could be very disruptive to the Canadian economy and is clouding the economic outlook. U.S. trade policy is a major source of uncertainty. There are many possible scenarios. There's a lot we don't know. We don't know what new tariffs will be imposed, when, or how long they will last. We don't know the scope of retaliatory measures or what fiscal supports will be provided. And even when we know more about what is going to happen, I do need to be clear, it's still going to be difficult to be precise about the economic impacts, because we have little historical experience with tariff changes of the magnitude that the U.S. is contemplating. Nevertheless, some things are clear. A long-lasting and broad-based trade conflict would badly hurt economic activity in Canada. At the same time, the higher cost of imported goods will put direct upward pressure on inflation. Monetary policy cannot offset this. What we can do is help the economy adjust. With inflation back around the 2% target, we are better positioned to be a source of economic stability. However, with a single instrument, our policy interest rate, we can't lean against weaker output and higher inflation at the same time. As we consider our monetary policy response, we will need to carefully assess the downward pressure on inflation from weakness in the economy and weigh that against the upward pressure on inflation from higher input prices and supply chain disruption.
So a lot of people may not like the Bank of Canada, as Gov.exe clearly puts forth in their comment. However, there is a kernel of truth in what they say, and so gonna take that and use it and talk about it, which is the whole entire, which is the accumulation of the tariff conflict could crush our economy. And I've been saying that for a while. And as he also stated, we don't know the full extent of retaliatory tariffs, and I have said before that anything is probably on the drawboard of this tariff conflict in the long game. And so, tell me what you're thinking down below. How do you think this whole entire conflict will end? In my opinion, and I know this is not a popular opinion, it is definitely not a popular opinion, but I will state it because it is true. Canadians would, in the long term, Canadians would do better if we were to be part of America. We would. Because as it is currently looking, as things keep on going down this pipeline, that whole entire thing that people call as a fallacy, or the slope, the long slope, the sinking hole here, we're just going further and further down. Eventually, Canada's economy will probably, or could, be crushed by the U.S. in this trade tariff conflict. And so I would say, in the long term, it would probably be better for Canadians to be part of America right now, so that this would not go any further, because the further this goes, the more poor Canadians will, and the larger the third world part of Canada will grow. It is not going to look good. But enough of me giving my opinion. Tell me what you're thinking about that down below. Probably not good. Probably going to get a lot of people who don't like my opinion on that. And the contest is, if you were here for last video, there's a contest. I want you to give me, go down in the comments and give me a hate comment, okay? I want to reinvigorate creativity when it comes to hate comments. So with me giving my own opinion on that, fire them at me, and I'll rank them. I'm being genuine about that. I want people to, make creative hate comments on me, alright? Anywho, I hope to see you in the next video, but until then, I hope that you have a good one.